Welcome once again. Thank you very much for joining us for this presentation of driving adoption with Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. As it says on the slide, the presenter is Matt Leveri, manager at Protiviti. I met Matt a few months ago when Matt was doing the SharePoint Saturday presentation in Chicago. Did a wonderful presentation. In fact, much of the content from that presentation is the one that Matt is going to be doing today as well. And I invited Matt, why not come over here and do the presentation for VisualSP through the VisualSP platform. So Matt graciously accepted. I'm so glad you did, Matt. Thank you very much for joining today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Asif. Yeah, it was great talking to you too. I was kind of not fully aware of VisualSP at the time either, and I kind of got started with Microsoft and working with Microsoft products and technologies. Actually, way back in high school, certified to sell Windows 7 and the Office platform. And so I've kind of gone through the end user experience of getting people and educating people about products and technologies that Microsoft offer. Throughout college, I was a Microsoft student partner as well. And that was right around the time that Office 365 was first kind of getting started and launched. And so it kind of was a natural transition to me to become kind of a technology consultant specializing in the Microsoft stack of technology. And I've really always focused on the driving adoption and getting people to use these resources and technology. It's always kind of funny when you go and you get a phone call from your mom or dad and they're like, oh, how do I use my phone and all of that. And I always want to get your users empowered to be able to go and train themselves. And when I found out about the Learning Pathway solution, I was extremely excited about it. I think every tenant should have learning pathways in there at a minimum. But then when I also talked to you at SharePoint Saturday, the things that you're doing at VisualSP were also just amazing, and getting that in context training to people, I thought just took that to a whole new level. So I was really excited when you actually invited me to come on over. So as you mentioned, just a few things about me. I am from Chicago as well. So back in 2016, was really happy with the Cubs winning the World Series there. And then you can also follow me on Twitter or my blog for more content as well. So as Asif mentioned, we will be talking through what is Learning Pathways, kind of get you familiar with Learning Pathways. I'll show you how easy it is to add Learning Pathways to your Office 365 tenant. And then we'll go through the end user experience and then the administration side of it, just so you can see what's capable. Then I really want to talk about how you can drive that adoption through Learning Pathways and get that content out to your user. And then at the end, we'll also talk about the Success Center and some other Microsoft tools that are available for you to go and really ensure that your users are getting the most out of their experience. I know right now with everyone working remotely, there is probably an increased need, and I know some accelerated timelines for a lot of companies of getting people onto more of a collaborative environment. So whether that's Teams or just SharePoint Online, and really working in that collaborative nature. And I'm sure if you may have struggled with getting training material, or you probably have had issues in the past with training portals, and you start your training portals and they never stay up to date and they never look the greatest, and they're kind of just kind of using what you can, or maybe even just point your users over to YouTube and say, just watch these videos. But what Learning Pathways really, really excels in is providing that context inside of your SharePoint Online environment out to your users, and gives you the ability to customize and show what you're actually showing to them. So you don't have to generate the content. The content is up to date by Microsoft as well. And so it does have that connection. So every quarter, you're going to get content updates. So that means that you don't have to go and continually update your content. If there's a new feature that comes out in Teams that you want to educate your users about, you actually don't have to do anything else. Microsoft will push that update every quarter for all of that new content, making the jobs of the people who create that training material that much easier. And they can focus more on getting users to actually use the products and technologies as opposed to generating documents and training materials. As it is based inside of SharePoint Online, you do have the ability to go and create your own playlist, customize the SharePoint site. You can customize any of this content with any of the features that are available in SharePoint Online. So you can add new lists, you can add additional documents, you can add videos from Stream, you can embed Microsoft Forms if you want to some of the pages that you create as well. And that really lets you go and give that training material a little bit more life as well. And so let's move on into really what Learning Pathways getting it into your tenant. That's probably the first step. Is you're like, okay, that all sounds great, Matt. So how do I actually go and get this into my tenant? So as an IT admin, you can go and provision the Learning Pathways site. I'm going to skip through a good portion of these slides and actually just skip over to a demo, but it will add over just a SharePoint application, as well as a new site collection for Learning Pathways. It's really simple to go and add this. The deck will be made available. So if you are an organization that does not have Learning Pathways currently, and you're looking to go and do this, you can share this deck and these instructions with your IT admin staff, and they can go and get that added. But you can install Learning Pathways with just a click of the button through the SharePoint PnP Provisioning engine. What's great about this provisioning engine is it is remote and it's web-based. So you can log in with your tenant, your account for an admin, and they can click add to your tenant. It shows you what will be added, any web parts that are added, and all the content that's going to be included as well. And one other thing I want to talk about with this provisioning solution is it's not just Learning Pathways that's in here. There's a lot of other topics that Microsoft have pushed, and some things like their lookbooks. And if you see Microsoft demos or you see anything, you've probably seen a reference to landing, or you can see that they have this new crisis communication for some of the things that are going on right now. If you want to get ideas on how you can build out your department sites for your own intranet, this provisioning engine has more than just the PnP, the Learning Pathway solution to provision. So you can go and get some ideas on how you want to go and build out your own SharePoint Online environment as well from this PnP provisioning engine. But to get to Learning Pathways, you can see under Solutions, you have M365 Learning Pathways, and Microsoft does also have a freelance communication solution that they did as well, if you're looking for those. And then just with a simple click of the button, you'll be able to go and provision that site. So you'll enter in the email to be alerted of when that gets created. You can select where you want that site to be created on that new site collection URL. And since it is based in SharePoint, you can also apply that theme. There is then the confirmation that will appear to get that into your tenant. While the content is up to date inside of Learning Pathways, there is a web part that may need to be updated from time to time. It's as simple as updating any SharePoint application. The app owner can go and upload it, and then just as the owner on the PnP on the Learning Pathways site, you'll be able to click Get It to go and bring in the most recent version. So actually, right now this says version 2. Version 3 is actually now live, and version 4 is hopefully coming soon, as in currently in preview. So as I mentioned, the content is up to date, but sometimes you do have to update the web part. So this shows how that content is up to date and syncs with GitHub. So it is available to GitHub. There have been some issues in the past with companies that have blocked access to GitHub, which has caused some issues with this content loading. So just make sure that the support.office.com, the docs.office.com, and also the GitHub CDN is available and accessible. So that way you can ensure that you're getting that synced content. But basically what happens is this content is up to date. Same content that shows on a lot of the Microsoft Docs page that you may have been pointing your users to already is going to be synced inside of your tenant. So if you want to get some Excel training, you can go and easily view that Excel training inside of the Learning Pathways web part. So I'll pause there for any questions if there's anything that is in the chat on getting it added. I'm happy to go into a little bit more detail, as I did kind of gloss over that section fairly quickly.
All good, Matt, so far. Obviously the way you're talking about it right now and where you're headed to, people definitely want to see exactly what it looks like. How do we get it, and how does it look, and how do they manage it going forward? So I'll look out for more questions. We're all good so far.
Great. Yep, so as I mentioned, I'll start by showing what the end user experience is in the portal, and then I'll talk about how you can administer the portal as well for Learning Pathways. So inside of Learning Pathways, you have the ability to navigate to either product or technology, but also some scenarios as well. So you can see in here, there's some getting started, so what you can do on your first days inside of Office 365, some scenarios such as the modern workplace. And they've actually recently added this work remotely one in the recent content update again, since things have rapidly changed with this all working remotely because of COVID. Microsoft realized that and wanted to get more content out to users to understand how they can use these technologies to work remotely. On the products, you'll see the products that you're familiar with inside of the Office 365 stack, as well as some of the adoption tools that you will see if you are a site owner and you're administering the learning pathway solution. When you click into a product such as Outlook, you'll see various playlists. So you can use Outlook to manage your inbox, see Outlook mobile as well, searching and sharing, and understanding how to use these mobile applications. And then inside of the playlist, each playlist has made up of multiple assets. So an asset can contain a video, a how-to steps, some sort of guide as well can be available inside of an asset. And additionally, there's additional resources that also appear. So in this one, I'm in a Microsoft Word asset, and what is Word? And then I can see what's new in Word inside of Windows, click on Word, get quick starts, and then also discover more training with LinkedIn Learning as well that Microsoft made available to click into. Your users will also have the ability to navigate inside of learning pathways as well. Since this is a web part, it sits on one SharePoint page. And so you can't use the back and forward buttons that you would typically use in a web browsing experience. You will have to either use the breadcrumbs or the previous and next buttons here. Inside of learning pathways, you can also search for playlists or assets. So if you know what you're looking for but don't know exactly where it is, a simple search can do that. And you can also go and go through all of the different assets through an asset dropdown as well. And then you can also expand it full screen if needed so you don't take up the SharePoint Chrome. And the final thing that I want to mention in here is that there is a capability of deep linking as well. Since it does sit on side of an actual web part and on a page inside of SharePoint, you can't just paste the URL as you would if you want to share a playlist or an asset with a user. You will have to use the deep linking capabilities so you can go and send them directly to that asset. That way you're not just sending them to the generic learning pathways landing pages. So let's see it in action. So I've got a demo up here of learning pathways. So I have learning pathways inside of my tenant. You can see that I've applied a theme on there as well. And so up here we have first days, some of the recommended training, and also let's click into working remotely, kind of seeing how end users can collaborate inside of Microsoft 365. Then here we have a video, as I mentioned, in this playlist, and I can easily go and click next to go and view some more information about getting started with office.com. As I mentioned, you can go and we traverse this through the back and forward breadcrumbs and not the buttons themselves. Clicking into any of these products or technologies, go and see Office on the web and how we want to go and share documents. And so then you have that capability to go and click into the video. As I mentioned, these videos, they are provided by Microsoft, so you can add things in there, such as the translations and the captions that you'd expect, view it full screen, and a full robust video player right in there for your end users, as well as any of the other options that you would expect to see. So that's a quick overview of how your users will be traversing learning pathways. You might be thinking, okay, this is fantastic, but at your organization, maybe you're not using Yammer, or maybe you're not using Sway, or maybe you're not using Form. So what capabilities do you have around the content inside of learning pathways? And the answer is actually a lot. Inside of learning pathways, you have the ability to go and manage playlists yourself. So you can go and easily go and create new playlists, new assets, and new subcategories as well. You also have the ability to copy playlists as well. So when you copy a playlist, you might be looking at something like creating a chat-based workplace in Teams. I've hidden this one in this example because maybe you're not rolling out your one-to-many chats inside of Teams because you're still using Link or Skype, and you really want to go in and have that kind of in the coexistence mode, and you're working to set that up as you've onboarded people quickly. You can actually hide just this chat-based workplace playlist inside of Teams, or you could copy it and make a new playlist based off of some of that content, but not all of that content. As I mentioned, you can copy that playlist. And if you copy any playlist that Microsoft has created, the updates that you are showing will still be synced inside of that connection to GitHub. So you don't necessarily have to worry about your users not having that most up-to-date content, if you want to slightly modify one of the out-of-the-box playlists, those will continue to be synced between Microsoft and your playlist. As I mentioned, when you customize an out-of-the-box playlist, you have the ability to add an image, update the title, description, select what technology and category it does apply to, the level and the audience, as well as the order of that. So if you want to go and add something to the beginning of the playlist or the end of the playlist or somewhere in the middle, you have the ability to go and take all of those steps to customize that playlist. When you do want to go and create an asset for a playlist, you can either create an asset page, which as I mentioned is just a SharePoint online site page, and you can do anything that you want inside of that site page. So whether it's creating a video, adding a list, adding a library of documents, anything that you want to be able to do inside of a SharePoint page, you can do inside of an asset. You can also point to already created URLs. So maybe you have a training portal kind of already created based on SharePoint pages. You can point to those pages as well to bring in that content, so you don't have to go and regenerate anything that you add there. And then you also have the ability to add new subcategories as well. So in this scenario, you can see that I want to add a new subcategory. I can add in the heading name. And right now it's English. More languages are coming soon to learning pathways as well. So you have the ability to have translated content. So there are some folks from overseas, or even in Canada. I know Quebec does have some requirements for French to be a language available as well. Those capabilities are coming to learning pathways. So hopefully we don't have an exact release date for that, but it is on the roadmap and is currently being previewed. So hopefully that comes soon for all of those needs as well, especially with remote and global workforces. I know that can be a major challenge. Great, so let's hop over into a demo of the administration of it. To get to the administration side of learning pathways, if you are a site owner, you have the ability to see this admin gear. So that same gear icon that I'm sure you've grown to know and love inside of Office 365, you have the ability to go and just get into your administrative page, or you can link to it directly through the custom learning admin ASPX page. As I mentioned before, you can show and hide different playlists here. So just simply clicking the visibility toggles, you have that ability. So if you, like many organizations, maybe don't have a full stack of products out, or you're not using some of the things. I know Yammer isn't necessarily rolled out to everyone, or maybe you're not using Planner, or Sway is another one that, not to pick on it, I know a lot of organizations maybe aren't rolling that out. You can hide that so you're not confusing your users and showing them training material for things that you are not actually rolling out to them. And then, as I mentioned, you also have the ability to copy playlists. Let me go into a playlist and click copy this playlist. Try to copy this playlist. There we go. So it's created this playlist copy. Now a copy of a copy because I clicked it too many times. And then I can click on edit these details. And let me just change this to, I'll just add Microsoft Office Quick Start Guide here. It's in the Office Basics. You can change the image, change the technology that it does fall under. What I want to do here is I actually want to go and delete this playlist here. And then let's add a new asset. As I mentioned, languages are currently in preview, so you will have the ability to add languages coming soon, not rolled out fully to the public yet through the PnP Provisioning engine that I mentioned earlier. But you can go and easily just add a title for Office Online Collaboration and go and create an asset page for that. So that goes, and as I mentioned, creates just a SharePoint site page. So it's going to be, just takes the title and then go and click save that asset. I'll copy the link to it so I can easily get over to it. So with that Office Online Collaboration, as I mentioned, it is just a SharePoint site page. So anything that you want to be able to do inside of a SharePoint page for training material, you can do. You can change the title bar. So let's just go with plain. And we want to make this a very web-focused experience. So any of the web parts that you have, whether it's a custom web part or an Office 365 out-of-the-box web part, you have that ability to go and add to that. So maybe it's just some text that you want to add, or you want to embed some other some of the links inside of there. All of those capabilities are available to you to be able to go and really just get that most beneficial experience out to your end user. So that is a quick overview of the admin side, and I do want to spend the rest of it on really how you can drive this adoption and the different areas that you can drive that adoption. So I'll pause there for any questions on
Yeah.
the administration experience.
So one good question that I saw over here, well, it's actually many good questions, but one that caught my eye immediately was by Lynn or Linny, I believe. And she's asking, how do you check what version do you have? So you mentioned the different versions, but how do I know if I have it implemented, which version do I have?
Yep. So moving over into site contents, you'll see Learning Pathways as an application that has been deployed inside of Office 365. And then you can go and view the app details when that one loads. So it is an application here, and then it will pop up and show you that the version and the release date. So you can see here, I'm on version 4.0, and this is the most recent version that has been added. So through the site contents, you'll be able to see what versions that you are on.
So along the same lines,
I've actually not been.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I've not been asked that question. That is a fantastic question. I'll state this this presentation to include that, because I know that could be a very confusing thing as additional apps are released.
Let me ask you another interesting question that I think goes along with what we just talked about. How would I know as an admin that there's a new version out? And then would it be directly within Learning Pathways, or would it be an email? How would I know, first of all? And then how difficult is it to update?
So it's extremely easy to go and update the application. If you've worked with an Office 365 app catalog as an admin, it's super easy. You basically just upload the new version of the application and deploy it. And then let me go back a few slides here. After the admin has gone and updated the application and you navigate over to the details, you'll see an option to click Get It to pull in the most recent version. So it's a two-step process where your admin will upload the most recent version of that application, and then the site owner who's kind of administering Learning Pathways can go over and click Get It to pull in that most recent version.
Gotcha. Awesome. Let me put another one in here since we're paused for questions. So Brian is asking a question about, can Learning Pathways content be used to train the adoption bot?
That is a great question. I'm actually not aware of that one.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact answer either, but Brian, if I had to guess, I would say that you can use any content to train the bot, but you'd have to feed it manually, I think, like from a manual source. I'm not sure if you can just directly feed from the Learning Pathways GitHub repository, but that's just a guess right now. Something we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah. Is there anything, other questions that have come in?
Let's see, there's definitely a few more over here. Can you also reorder the different products, the different playlists that's out there by Richard? Actually,
so
yeah,
yes,
I think
you can.
Go ahead.
So you have the ability to reorder the kind of inside assets of things, but unfortunately, you cannot go and change the order of putting OneDrive ahead of Outlook, for example. It's going to be kind of in the order that you see here, and there's no ability to go and change that order.
Gotcha. All right. And Richard also was asking, how do I get version 4.0? I'm on version 3.0, but the release date is also May 2020.
Yes, version 4.0 is currently in a limited preview, so it is actually not fully released, which is why I have a newer version that is not fully rolled out yet. Sorry for the confusion on that one.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly somebody else. Lynn was asking that as well, that I don't have the latest version, but don't have the Get It button, and any idea why? And no, you just explained why. Okay. Question by Caroline: can you remove content from apps you're not using?
Yes, you can. So you can fully remove any of the products that you want to. But if you want to just remove specific either playlists as a whole, you can go and hide those playlists. Or if you want to remove a specific asset from that playlist, what you'd go and do is you'd copy that playlist to then have the ability to go and edit this playlist. And you'd hide the initial playlist and then just come in here to delete the asset. So it's kind of a multi-step process to go and hide just a single asset.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have that ability to go and customize that. And then, as I mentioned, if you do go and hide or remove assets or delete assets, that copied version. So if Microsoft does update something to this collaborate playlist, you actually will have the ability to go and get those updates that Microsoft does push to those assets itself.
Perfect. I also wanted to make a comment regarding the languages that you mentioned. No one has asked about this yet, actually, but it's a very good question that I'm sure is in many people's mind, maybe not in this room right now, but outside. Languages are definitely coming in learning pathways from Microsoft. We, as a partner, VisualSP actually already support the languages as well because the content's already out there. So we started consuming it about a month ago. So if you have VisualSP and you have a browser that's in Spanish, French, Dutch, whatever, it's automatically going to start serving content from learning pathways in that language. And the communication site that Matt is showing, that's going to be also coming by Microsoft soon, like Matt said. Don't know exactly when, but it's going to be soon. One more question over here by Daniel talking about there's a fair bit of tweaking and customization to do when a pathway site is provisioned. Is there a recommended way to create a finished site to provision to different people? For example, installing in different clients?
So at this time, unfortunately, there's not really a concept of audience targeting if you're looking to target it specifically to different kind of user groups inside of your organization. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not. As far as the tweaking to kind of customize this to your content as you need to, and kind of having that as a prepackaged solution, unfortunately, there's really not a way to go and get that set up. So only maybe this is answering the question, maybe it isn't. But let's say that you're not rolling out teams. Is there a way that you can just click and say, oh, I only want these applications at the start, as opposed to having to come in afterwards and tweak it? Unfortunately, that is not a capability.
Yeah, the way I'm reading the question is the following. Daniel, please correct me if I'm wrong by putting a comment in the Q&A over here. But I'm reading it as, can I have different, for example, templates almost, where I maybe as a consultant can go ahead and push it out to one client like this and have a different template for a different client, etc. Or even if it's not a consultant, but a person who's doing it for different departments or different different teams within a big organization. That's and that,
Yep.
that functionality does not exist, as you mentioned.
Yep. And one thing to note on that topic is you can have basically one instance of learning pathways inside of your Office 365 tenant. So unfortunately, you will not be able to go and put the one version of the web part and its content in one site and another version of the web part and its content on another site. While the web part can exist in different places, any of the customizations you take are going to take place globally across the tenant. The way to get around that, though, would be using the deep linking capabilities and embedding that content inside of an iframe on those specific sites that you want to target. But basically what happens is when you go in provision learning pathways, the most recent version that you've added to your tenant is going to be considered the kind of master version of it. So if you run that PnP deployment tool multiple times, whatever one you deployed last to that site collection would kind of be the master site collection that would control the content for all of the other applications for the learning pathways.
Awesome. We'll spend a couple more minutes and then definitely let's get back to the presentation here. So first of all, Daniel said, yep, you read it right. And the first answer was good too. So, but great to hear ideas. Thank you. You're welcome, Daniel. And then this last question, then we'll just go back to the presentation and then we'll definitely come back to the questions. These are awesome questions, folks. Please keep questions coming. That's exactly what we want to do, is answer the questions that you have in your mind and not just stuff that we want to talk about. So this last question here, Richard is asking, is it free and will it remain free? I'm sorry, that's not Richard, that was Tamara. Tamara asked that question. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, learning pathways is 100% free. They're actually working on open sourcing the web part as well. So I kind of glossed over a lot of the technical side of it. But once the web part is open source, you'd be able to actually update and customize that SPFX application as you would see fit as well. And that's where partners or consultants would be able to come in and kind of build some of those other customizations that we had talked about that are not supported by Learning Pathways. Learning Pathways is kind of more really that solution to provide that training content. And then some of the other partners, whether it's a consulting firm that you use or some company like VisualSP that also does training, those would be, you'd be able to really drive learning the content from Learning Pathways to that next level. I do not believe the web part is open source right now for the full code behind the SPFX web part, but that is definitely something that is on the roadmap.
All right, I'll throw something else in there. Obviously, people are probably wondering, well, if everything is free here, why do you need something like VisualSP or some other product that builds on top of it? Learning Pathways is a great solution, but please remember it's not a quote unquote product. It's a solution, it's an open source solution, which is a wonderful initiative by Microsoft. But if you're looking for additional things like analytics, usage reporting, customization, in a different, I dare to say, a little bit easier way of doing it at times, additional content packs. You're looking for more things like that that builds on top of Learning Pathways, then you look for a third-party solution like VisualSP or others.
Thanks.
Matt, I think we should, we can go for it and then come back for questions.
Yep. So there were some questions that we talked about, and I just wanted to demo this. There was a question about hiding and showing products. So as I mentioned, some of the products that I've hidden OneDrive on here as well, and some of the other ones. So when I go back over to my SharePoint training, I no longer see that OneDrive application. I hit Outlook as well. So those things are hidden and they don't show in the product. You also aren't able to navigate to a deep link for that product if it's not enabled as well. So if I hide a playlist, I cannot access that playlist at all. It's completely hidden. So just one thing to keep in mind is if you're trying to kind of hide some content but show some content to other people, the content does have to be marked as visible to be able to be deep linked to as well. And then there were a few questions as well about kind of how admins can get around Learning Pathways. So all the way at the bottom, if you are an admin, there are two things in here, tools. And I touched on this at the end of the presentation, but I'll talk about it now, about how you can go and create a champion program inside of your organization to really help drive that adoption. And then there's also another one in here for the Admin Success Center. So this webinar that I've been doing on learning how you can customize Learning Pathways, drive adoption, and measure impact is all actually in this Admin Success Center as well. There's some content in there that will also help you plan Learning Pathways. So instead of coming back to watch this webinar, you can always come to the Admin Success Center once you do provision Learning Pathways inside of your organization. And to find out what's new and changed, this also comes from the Learning Pathways Microsoft Docs as well. So you can see all the content that's in here that has recently been updated as well. So that does show inside of Learning Pathways itself. So kind of a self-containing admin support portal as well. So the last thing that I want to talk about in here, and let me just quickly scroll down, is this is all great and everything, and you can go and send URLs and links and emails to people as much as possible. But what I kind of want to talk about is how you can actually use Office 365 technology to get people to go to your training material as well. So the number one thing that I want to show is setting up a custom help tile inside of Office 365. So if you're not aware of this feature or functionality, your global admins do have the ability to go and set up your organizational profile, which does include custom help tiles. Title can be whatever you want. You can include help desk information, can include help desk email and help desk URL. If you're not using this to point to something like ServiceNow or some of the other ticket reporting software, you can use this to go and link to the custom learning. And you do have the need help icon that shows up in the help bar when you click on that inside of a site. So that icon right next to the gear icon, the help icon at the bottom will show this custom help panel as well. Another one that you have the ability to do is adding a link to the SharePoint landing page. So on the left-hand rail, you will have the ability to go and add a featured link, and that can, of course, link to Learning Pathways. You can have as many featured links as you want. So below the following and recent content that your users will see on the SharePoint landing page, you can also add that featured link there to have that available. One other one I want to talk about as well is a bookmark inside of Microsoft Search. If you're not aware of Microsoft Search, it does have customization aspects of it. So if you do search for one of the keywords inside of Microsoft Search, you can actually be directed to learning pathways. So if you have a user who is searching for training material, you as an IT staff can go and have learning pathways be bookmarked and show up when people are searching. And that is all great. That provides at least some measure of in-context training to get that out there. But really, it doesn't show what people really want to see, which is that in-context, in-content training. And so that's where kind of VisualSP would come in and be a better together story, is really displaying those overlays or those help icons as you need to. Some of the things outlined on this slide as well, as I mentioned, in context delivery, analytics of content usage is a major one. At the current time, Learning Pathways does not support any really analytics of who has viewed which out-of-the-box playlist or who has viewed which content. As I mentioned, it is all driven on a web part on a single page. So you can use the usage analytics of the site to see who's actually going to the site itself. If you don't have insight into which content people are actually viewing, you also don't have the ability in Learning Pathways to security trim the content. As I mentioned, if you want to go and send something, it does have to be visible and everyone have access to it. So if you're piloting teams to a smaller subset of users right now, or you're using Sway with the marketing team and you want to provide that content to them, but not necessarily to your IT staff, you do have the ability to go and security trim that content with VisualSP that you do not have. But that kind of in-context delivery is really what I think drives Learning Pathways to that next level with VisualSP and kind of being better together. So as you can see here, there's a help panel that's coming off on the side here. And then there's also this information icon here as well that your users would be able to click into to get some more information about maybe what they're seeing with this media package page. And again, this is in Teams, this is in SharePoint, this is in OneDrive, this is across the Office 365 applications and suite. And then VisualSP did recently release a Microsoft Teams app as well. So you can see on the left here all that training content, whether it's from Learning Pathways or whether it's from some of the custom training materials that you've created, is available inside of Teams with Learning Pathways as well, inside of Teams with VisualSP as well, which really does kind of bring that up to that next level to really provide that in-context training. So when users do have that issue, they know exactly where to go for help, don't have to go and click around, leave the experience, go to a SharePoint site, and then come back to it. It really does take that up to that next level. Great. So those are some of the places that you can go in and add links into Learning Pathways and how it's a little bit better together with VisualSP. As I did talk about a little bit ago, some of the admin resources for driving adoption. So as I mentioned, there is that Admin Success Center. There is also an adoption kit available for you where you can go and view how you can really drive that adoption through Learning Pathways. It's a full zip drive of a bunch of content that Microsoft has created to really drive your users to use Office and Microsoft 365 products and technologies. And then additional on the last slide, there's some information on the installation guide, provisioning, the adoption tools, adding Learning Pathways to Teams. So if you do have some questions on how that can be done, there is some interplay there. I didn't want to necessarily touch on it on this call. And then also Microsoft Docs for any customization of Learning Pathways. This slide deck is available on SlideShare as well. And then if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me at email or on Twitter as well. So we'll take the next time for any additional questions that people may have.
Thanks so much, Matt. The reason we stopped early with the actual formal presentation is so we can actually take your questions and not just verbally, but also show you things if you have any questions that need to be answered visually. I see definitely a bunch of good questions in here in the Q&A. If you have more questions, please keep them coming. So Matt, someone's asking this question. Let's see, who was this? Todd is asking the question that you already kind of answered. Any tracking for staff that watch these training videos?
Unfortunately, not for the out of the box content. Of course, if you go and create a, let me bring up my slide here. So if you go and create your own assets or you have videos hosted in Stream, you do have the analytics in Stream or YouTube or wherever you're hosting your videos to go and view that content. Otherwise, the only really analytics that you have are going to be based on the usage statistics that are available through your SharePoint Online site. So these are available on all sites inside of Office 365, and you just kind of get aggregate details. So you can see who's had unique views over the last 7, 30, or 90 days, any of the site visits as well to see if people are using it. But you don't necessarily get to see who is necessarily interacting with which content unless you go and create some of those custom pages or embed some additional resources and training material.
Yeah. And that's something that I've heard many times also, and that's one of the reasons we at VisualSP put analytics on top of learning pathways, is that in addition to any other health content that you have. So you all at once in one place, you can see exactly who has viewed what, and vice versa. If you're looking at a specific content, say, okay, who actually has viewed this piece of content, you can view that as well. And Microsoft, any open source solution like this, that's how Microsoft has done since the beginning, at least that I've been part of Microsoft ecosystem since 2000 actually, that they build a foundational product. That's how SharePoint was built in the beginning also, the fundamentally wonderful pieces of blocks of things that you can do something with, and then partners come and complete the story. So that's what we have done also at VisualSP, the analytics story, the in-context delivery of content, full support for the product, and everything else is provided on top of it using VisualSP. But obviously the learning pathways product or the learning pathways project, I guess itself is a great way to start. And then if you need additional of those things, analytics and things like that, then that's where you come to a third party.
Yeah, and also that's a great point as well. Is learning pathways isn't necessarily a full learning management system.
Right.
It doesn't provide all those insights that you would necessarily want or expect. I know people have asked this question time and time again about can you go and like make people watch one video before they can see the next video and kind of have that training kind of flow so you can make sure users go through that progression. And to Asa's point, I mean that's where Microsoft would kind of look to partners to go and customize. They want to provide that foundation of here's the content, here's what you can do with it. And there are definitely ways that you can do it inside of the platform as well, whether you want to customize something inside of Power Apps or do something with deep linking yourself to kind of mimic that experience. That's definitely possibilities that have been floated around and talked about. People have talked about customizing the asset pages themselves and then adding maybe a Microsoft form to the bottom of it to see if they found that training helpful to gain insight. Those types of things have definitely been talked about and kicked around, but there's no plans to add that into the solution itself. That'd be a customization that would need to be done on top of the portal after it's provisioned.
Question by Richard here. Any idea when 4.0 will be released?
I've heard June, but there's no official timeline.
And I mean, I don't know the answer to the following question, but maybe you do about the languages. Is there a specific timeline for that, or is it just in the future, sometime soon?
That would be released with version 4. So not 100% sure about when that would be. And it's not going to be every language either. I don't know which languages are going to be supported. But just if you, I know Dutch will not be supported. That one I can tell you. I think there's 9 languages that are going to be supported at the start. So just be aware that just because language support is coming and it's something that they want to do and make it multilingual, it's not going to be every single language available on day one.
Yeah, I was going through the list as well. Quite ironically, Dutch content does exist actually for learning pathways, so we support it through VisualSP. In addition to that, Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and a few more. So all that stuff is already there for VisualSP, but many of them, I'm not sure if all of them, but many of them are coming with learning pathways as well. Question by Tamara here. Can you add custom tags or metadata?
Not to any of the playlists or the assets. If you do want to create a page itself, of course, you have the full ability to update the page content type to include any of the custom tags and metadata. But unfortunately, out of the out of the box playlists, you do not have the ability to add in any custom tags, metadata. If I can go back over into the admin side of it as well, let me go into a custom. I have one. I'm going to do a custom one here real quick, just to show what capabilities you have. Is if you look in here, there are product scenarios for categories. You can't update any of the kind of main header categories. So you will have get started scenarios and products. You can add custom subcategories as well. For the level, you're left with beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And for the audience, you have the out-of-the-box audiences as well. There is not the ability to update or customize any of those at this time. I'm not sure if there's plans to do that or if it will be added in the future, but that is kind of feedback that we've heard as well.
Yep. So here's another question. This would be great to show. I'm not sure if you already showed this thing, but the web part that it comes with it, what are the type of customizations you can do with the web part?
So let's go and add a new page. And so as I mentioned, the web part does just sit on a page. So let me go and actually add a blank page. So if I go and add this web part to it, I'll go to a few things to note. When you add the web part, you do have to add the app to the page as well. It's not globally deployed. So you're not going to just see the Learning Pathways web part on other pages outside of the initial site collection it's deployed to. It's not a global application. So you don't necessarily have to worry about someone in another site coming in and saying, oh, I want to add Learning Pathways. The app does have to be added to that site collection to go and do that. So with the actual web part, there isn't necessarily much in the way of full customization. So I have the property panel open here where you can select the learning source, any of the web part titles if you need to, the content mode, and then if you need to do a filter based on some of the content, you can go and add that content in there. So I know there have been some questions about adding specific content to specific pages. So you can do that ability through deep linking, or you can add through the filter if you do want to add this to other sites to go and only show a specific category or subcategory. So in this instance, let's go to a filter of a subcategory, Microsoft Teams, to be able to go and embed all of the Teams training into a page. So that's one of the examples there on how the actual web part content can be updated as needed. But again, this is going to be to a specific playlist level. And then you can also select an asset as well. So you have a lot of capabilities in that actual web part to go and really customize and drive what you want to show to your users as well.
So just for clarification,
so
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, so if you really wanted to get those analytics on page usage statistics, you could, in theory, go and extrapolate everyone out into its own page, but no one would actually want to go in and do that necessarily. So,
well, if you're really motivated, there's a way to do everything, obviously, but it takes a lot more time to do that. Just to be clear, what you were saying before is that the app needs to be added to every new site collection.
So on the topic of the app itself, if I was to go to another site inside of this tenant, I wouldn't see the Learning Pathways application. So if I do want to go and have a site for IT training and HR training, for example, I would need to go and add the application itself to the site collection before that web part will be available. So you can see in here, should show up and under the Your Apps. I'm not sure what it's actually called, but Learning Pathways would need to be added to the site as an app before you can see the web part to add that to pages. If you do want to bring content outside of the initial Learning Pathways site collection that's provisioned with the PnP provisioning engine.
Gotcha. So if you really wanted, I guess I'm extrapolating here that if you really wanted learning pathways to be available to new sites, you have to make it part of the provisioning process, or you have to manually just go ahead and actually just add it every time for it to be
Yep.
available.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Let's see here. It just a couple of questions came here. One by Richard, one by trying to see what, yeah, Lisa. Something similar, talking about the custom content. So when you're making custom content, first of all, can you make a custom content package? Can you import stuff or can you make it from scratch? I know you showed some of that already. And then if you already have videos, how do you add a custom video? Maybe you could show that again.
Yeah. So on the topic of content packs, there is the kind of the capability for having different content packs inside of learning pathways. So if you do want to add additional content that you already have, you can inject that into learning pathways. There's some PowerShell commands that can be run to go and point your content to additional resources that you go and have. I won't necessarily touch on that, but yes, it is possible to extend learning pathways content to different data sources. On the topic of adding a video, so let's go to, let's get started with 5 simple steps instead of 6. And let's say on this new playlist, let me go to the actual page itself. So as I mentioned, all of these pages are going to be SharePoint site pages as well. So you do have the ability to do anything that you would want to do inside of a SharePoint site page. So let's say that we have some videos up on stream or on YouTube using one of the other box web parts, whether it's the video embed web part. If you want to embed something from some other source, you have that ability, or you can go and use either Office 365 for the old video portal, or you can use Stream to go and embed that stream video and select whatever the source is. If you want to just go and show a single video, type in the video address as well. That comes from Stream inside of the Office 365 tenant. Or again, just pasting the embed link that you could do to a YouTube video on YouTube or one of the other video sharing websites.
Awesome. Here's a question by Wyvon here. We heard admin, just the word admin, a lot. Which admin can install the learning pathways? Is it the site collection admin, the SharePoint Online admin, or the admin who has access to the admin center, or somebody else?
Yeah, thanks for calling me out on that. I'll simplify that one. To add learning pathways to a tenant, you need to be a global admin. To go and update the content of learning pathways and actually access this custom learning admin page where you can go and customize the playlist, you have to be a site owner to go and do that. Site owners also have the ability to go and add in applications as well. So if you want to add the web part on a new page, you can do that as the site owner as well.
Awesome. Well, looking for more questions out there, folks. So if you have other questions, please let us know. What is your personal feeling, Matt, yourself, about the whole, release of learning pathways? Do you think it's a good idea by Microsoft?
Oh, it's a fantastic idea. So my wife's company actually moved from being a G Suite organization to being a Microsoft Suite organization. And so when she was getting started, she kind of asked me, Matt, how do I find content and how do I get training? And so I actually just spun up a learning pathways. I spun up her account in my tenant. I'm like, here's all Microsoft's training materials, have at it. So instead of pointing her over to anything, I just said, here's a link, log in, and you're set to be able to really access all of this training material. And it probably has reduced the questions she's asking me a lot about some of the Microsoft technology. And I love it. It's, I think, probably one of the greatest things that they've done for the training and usability. And any client that I've ever demoed it to has always been extremely excited about it as well, because it really hits on probably the core issue of training material is how do I generate all this training material and how do I get it out to people? And it takes away those 2 steps of having to create those repositories and keep that training material up to date, especially with a platform that's changing as much as Office 365 is. It's a Herculean task, even for me, to stay up to date with content. let alone someone from your learning or training departments as well. I mean, just the things that have been announced that build already with regards to the new SharePoint lists or the Office 365 lists app that's coming out. I'm sure there's going to be training material
Hmm.
generated for that as soon as it's released, and it's going to be made available in the app. So you don't even have to really worry about needing to get a preview of it, so you can go and get your training material of it to then train your users. Microsoft is just going to provide it to you, and I think that is it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I also agree with you that as a manufacturer, as the vendor who produces, who creates, and who supports Office 365, or now known as Microsoft 365, I'm glad Microsoft took that step of releasing it and having a training portal basically that you can just provision easily. The only thing as a trainer myself that when the reason we do things from VisualSP the way they do is that's a great first step, but getting folks to the destination site of go there to find what you're looking for, sometimes that's hard because having a destination site means the user has to be motivated enough to go to that site to look for the content and all. Web part definitely makes it better, so you can use a web part to make it available there. The in-context delivery of the content makes it even better if you have a need for that. So at the end of the day, you want the right content to be available to the right user at the right time, right? That's the main focus of everything and anything they're trying to do. I mean, we all go on sites, we see inline help icons, or we see announcement banners, or we see sometimes even pop-ups. Sometimes they're annoying, sometimes they're something very informative. But at the end of the day, we want the information presented to us where we need it, not somewhere else, just to make it easier. So I'm glad that this first step was taken by Microsoft, and vendors like us can actually build on top of that to make it just much easier as a first step, and then the second step if anybody needs to take that second step. One question here that came up by Tamara: can unique permissions be assigned to the assets and to pages?
Unfortunately, no. There's no security or permission trimming for the content on the learning pathways solution.
Yeah, that's another thing that I've been asked the exact same question before. And that's something that we put into VisualSP also, because SharePoint does have permissions, right? Specifically. So you can do that. You can actually do your own customization saying, okay, well, let me make sure that this particular page is only visible by full control or by design, by whatever permission level, but it doesn't happen out of the box with learning pathways. So we do that in VisualSP to build on top of it, but it's not there by default. If you want to do it manually, you have to go into each one, present it as a page, make sure that page is uniquely has the right permission level coded on it. Okay, let's see. Wyvon is, maybe I'm not sure if this is a comment or a question. Permissions have way more levels with Teams and SharePoint Online. Okay. Um, one more thing over here by Tamara. Once again, can you pull in only the Teams learning path to a Teams workspace?
So in that instance, what you'd want to do is you can go and create if you want to build, it would be a custom Teams app. You could build a Teams app, and then inside of that Teams app for Microsoft Teams, you can use kind of that deep linking capability that I talked about to only link into that Microsoft Teams playlist itself. So that would go and show that Teams content inside of Teams itself, kind of through a Teams app that you would go and build. And so that Teams app would allow you to really go and basically just surface URLs. It'd almost be a glorified iframe viewer to go and view that content of just Teams.
Wonderful. Well, this is perfect timing. We're out of questions and we're out of time also. Thanks so much, everybody, for being with us. And thank you, Matt, for doing a wonderful presentation and taking so many of questions, which I think are the most valuable thing that anybody, I believe, in my opinion, in a webinar you could do, because people come with questions and you want those questions to be answered, right? So thanks so much for being so gracious and answering all those questions. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. I completely agree. I really like doing these presentations in conferences, similar to the SharePoint Saturday where we met, where we get to actually interact with
Yeah.
people. And I've sat down and helped some people actually with some issues they were facing with their deployment of learning pathways. And fortunately, we can't do this necessarily in a virtual side of it. But yeah, I'm always happy to take questions. And if anything does come up, feel free to reach out and really happy to help.
Wonderful. Folks, the slide deck as well as the presentation for this webinar will be on our site, visualsp.com. You just go into Learning Hub and go to webinars. You'll see this webinar and other webinars from previously also recorded. Check it out. This webinar should be there within a day or maybe even less. And other webinars in the past are already there. And sign up for additional webinars too that are coming in the future. And let us know if you have any topics that you want us to talk about in the future. That'd be great. So until next time, thank you very much for being with us. Take care and have a wonderful day.